All right, let's jump into this deep dive. We're tackling Chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita today, Akshara Brahma Yoga.
The yoga of the imperishable divine.
Exactly. We've pulled together a stack of sources,
Yeah.
covering the core teachings, how you might actually apply them.
And even some different perspectives on these, well, really profound ideas.
Yeah. Our mission is basically to cut through the density, extract the most important insights from these texts for anyone, looking to understand this ancient wisdom.
It's a fantastic chapter because it really gets right to the heart of things. It starts with Arjuna asking Krishna some fundamental questions.
Questions that feel very relevant, actually.
Definitely. For anyone trying to figure out reality, consciousness, how to navigate life.
Yeah, Arjuna isn't messing around here. He wants to know about the ultimate truth, what that universal consciousness is.
The energy behind everything governing the cosmos.
Right. And he asks about right action, karma, and crucially, what's the deal with the consciousness inside a person? What even is that?
And Krishna's response, it immediately gives us these fundamental building blocks we need. It's not just defining terms. It's like he's handing us a map of reality.
Starting with Brahman.
Yes, Brahman, the ultimate reality itself.
Which the sources describe as the supreme, indestructible, universal consciousness, the eternal source of everything.
Beyond our typical grasp, really, transcending time and space.
It's the absolute ground of being.
Exactly. Then, to help us understand the world we actually experience, he introduces sort of 3 ways this universal consciousness manifests.
Okay, like what?
Well, first there's Adhibhuta.
Adhyuta.
That's the physical external world, made of the 5 elements. And the key thing, the sources say, is that it's constantly changing. It's the perishable stuff.
The material manifestation we interact with.
Yeah.
Got it. And Adidaiva.
That's the universal consciousness, but as it expresses itself cosmically, think the gods, the universal form of the Lord, maybe demigods included.
So the divine forces governing the universe.
Right. And finally, Adhyajna.
Adhyaj.
Krishna identifies this as the force performing action within the world. And here's the crucial bit. He says this is himself.
Himself.
The Supreme Lord, the Supersoul, living right inside the heart of every single embodied being.
Wow. So the sources make it really clear that Krishna is saying this ultimate reality,
Right.
Brahman, which he is the actual essence underlying all of it.
Yes, connecting Adhibhuta, the physical,
Adhidaya, the cosmic.
and Adhyajna, that inner divine presence. They're all aspects of this one core truth.
He's framing existence in a way that shows there's this single, supreme, imperishable reality at the core of everything.
Exactly. From the huge universe right down to the consciousness inside you. And this foundational understanding is really necessary for what comes next.
Because here's where Chapter 8 gets, really intense. It puts a massive spotlight on one specific, unavoidable moment in life.
Death. Yeah. Several sources really emphasize this. The state of your consciousness at the very moment you leave the body is absolutely pivotal.
Tell me about that teaching. It feels pretty high stakes.
It is. The core teaching is basically this. Whatever state of being, whatever thought, whatever memory a person is absorbed in when they are leaving their body, that is the precise state they will attain in the next life.
Wow. So your final thought, your final state of mind literally determines your next destination.
Yeah.
It's powerful, maybe slightly terrifying.
It is. And the implications, as the texts point out, they're huge. Because death is inherently uncertain, right? You don't know when it's coming.
Right, you can't plan for it perfectly.
So you can't just wait until the last minute to try and remember God or, get into some divine state. The teaching is that you have to cultivate this consciousness always.
Okay. So it's not about some last-second Hail Mary.
No.
It's the culmination of how you've lived, how you've trained your mind. Your dominant state of consciousness throughout life makes that final state possible. Or maybe impossible.
Exactly. It's the daily practice that prepares the ground for that final critical moment.
Which naturally leads to the next question. How do you do that? How do you actually cultivate this divine consciousness constantly and prepare for that moment whenever it might arrive? Chapter 8 seems to give us the blueprint.
It does. It offers several interconnected paths and practices. A really central one is constant remembrance and devotion.
Thinking of Krishna or the divine, always.
Yes. Keeping that divine presence sort of in the background of your mind, even during busy daily activities. Krishna actually tells Arjuna, think of me always and fight.
So it's not about retreating from life.
Not at all. It's about integrating the divine into your actions. The sources really highlight this as the most reliable way to ensure, a favorable destiny after death.
It sounds like having a constant spiritual filter or awareness running alongside everything else you're doing.
Precisely. And another vital element is surrender.
Surrender.
Surrendering your mind and your intellect to the divine. This shifts your actions, moving them away from being driven by ego and personal gain.
Towards being dedicated to a higher purpose. And there are also more, let's say, traditional yogic practices mentioned, right?
Yes, definitely. Practices focused on controlling the physical and the subtle body. Things like restraining the senses, fixing the mind on the divine, even specific life breath techniques like drawing the vital energy upwards towards the head. Meditation with a steady, focused mind is key.
And using the syllable Om.
Right, using the sacred syllable as a direct representation of the divine is also part of this path.
I noticed a really strong emphasis on Buddha yoga, the yoga of the intellect. This feels incredibly practical for, well, our modern, often chaotic lives.
It truly is. Buddha yoga is all about deliberately aligning your intellect with eternal truths, with what is ultimately real and beneficial.
So the intellect can then guide the mind.
Exactly. Guide the mind and manage your desires. It's not just about being smart, it's about training your discriminating faculty, your ability to tell the difference.
Between what?
Between the lasting and the fleeting. Think about it. Your mind often just chases what feels good now, right?
Oh, yeah. The impulse buy, the instant gratification.
That extra scoop of ice cream, even when you know it's not the best choice long term.
Guilty.
Buddha yoga is training your intellect to step in and say, wait, what's the real value here? What truly serves my higher purpose, my spiritual growth?
So you're redirecting that desire.
Yes. By training your intellect to value the divine, long-term well-being, spiritual progress over that temporary satisfaction.
So it's less about willpower just suppressing desires.
Right.
And more about educating the intellect to desire something higher, which then guides the mind.
Exactly right. You're essentially elevating the object of your desire based on knowledge and discernment. The sources also describe a kind of natural progression in devotion itself.
Oh, like stages.
Yeah, often seen in stages reflecting the growth of the mind and understanding.
How do those stages typically unfold?
Well, you might start with devotion to a personal form of God, seeing the divine as separate from yourself. That's often linked to Dvaita philosophy.
Okay, seeing God as other.
Then, as understanding deepens, you might start to see the divine in everything. Recognizing the cosmic form of the Lord, this understanding that everything is God, that relates more to Vishishtadvaita.
Seeing God in everything, and the final stage.
This is linked to the non-dual perspective Advaita, where devotion moves beyond form entirely. It's recognizing that the self within you is actually identical with the total, with the absolute.
No fundamental difference between the self and God.
Exactly. And a sincere seeker often naturally evolves through these stages of understanding.
And this path of devotion, Bhakti, it isn't separate from the path of knowledge, Janana, is it? They seem deeply intertwined in Chapter 8.
Absolutely. The sources really emphasize that genuine bhakti, true devotion, isn't just emotional. It involves a whole range of practices.
Including karma yoga?
Selfless action, yes. And upasana, which is meditation or focused worship. And crucially, jnana yoga, inquiry into the nature of reality, the formless.
So knowledge is key.
Vitally important. The path of knowledge, especially that inquiry into the self, is said to burn away ignorance. It dissolves that sense of separation, the idea of an other.
Duality disappears.
Right, leading to a non-dual state.
Yeah.
And this isn't just intellectual head knowledge, it's an inner transformation, sometimes described as a jnana yajna, like an internal sacrifice, where your thoughts, your limited sense of identity, are offered into that pure I am consciousness. The critical insight highlighted is that rituals or actions alone, without this deeper knowledge and inquiry,
They can't get you there.
they ultimately cannot lead to liberation in the way described here. All these practices, action, devotion, meditation, they seem to culminate in that direct knowledge and experience.
So all these practices, constant remembrance, surrender, the yogic techniques, refining the intellect, progressing in devotion, gaining knowledge, they're all tools.
Tools to cultivate that consistent divine consciousness,
Which is needed for the ultimate goal described in the chapter.
which is defined as attaining union with the supreme divine personality, or the absolute. It's liberation, moksha, freedom from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara.
And once you achieve that union, you're free. You don't come back to this world.
That's the teaching. Great souls, The yogis in devotion, those who have dedicated their lives through these practices and attain the supreme.
They don't return.
They never return to this temporary world, which, let's face it, is often described as full of miseries and repeated birth and death. This union is presented as the highest possible achievement.
And this is contrasted quite strongly with attaining even the highest celestial realms, right? Like heaven.
Yes, that's a really key distinction made in the sources. They explain that even if you reach the highest material planets, like, say, Brahma-loka, through good deeds or specific practices,
That's still temporary.
it's still a temporary destination. You enjoy the fruits of your actions there, sure. But eventually, you return to the earth plane. You're still subject to rebirth.
But the supreme abode,
That's different. It's described as eternal, imperishable, transcendental. It's beyond the cycles of creation and dissolution that govern the material world.
unmanifest.
Unmanifest, but distinct from unmanifest matter. It's beyond human imagination, really, indescribable. Yet, somehow, it pervades the entire universe and, astonishingly, resides within all beings.
Chapter 8 also touches on these vast cycles of time, doesn't it? And introduces an intriguing idea about the moment of departure itself, like different paths one might take.
It does. It talks about the cyclical nature of material creation and dissolution, how entities manifest during Brahma's day and are withdrawn during his night.
There's an emphasis on light and knowledge being fundamental.
Yes, fundamental for life and for liberation. And then it speaks of these two paths of expiration, the path of light and the path of darkness.
Okay, path of light.
That's seen as the auspicious path. It's associated with departing when the sun is in its northern course, Uttarana, and during the bright fortnight of the moon, Siklapaksha, and during the daytime. The teaching is, if you depart during this time, while remembering Brahman, maybe chanting Om,
You go to the supreme destination
liberation. Yes.
and the path of darkness.
That's considered less auspicious in this context. It's linked to the sun's southern course, Dakshinayana, the dark fortnight, Krishna Paksha, times of smoke or twilight, and nighttime.
And departing then leads.
It's said to lead to temporary celestial abodes, enjoyment, but ultimately return to earth and rebirth.
So is it the timing of your death that dictates everything, or is it the state of your consciousness? That seems to be the main theme.
The texts seem to imply both are factors, but yes, the state of consciousness is absolutely paramount. Knowing about these paths, though, it serves as maybe a further incentive for yogis aiming for that supreme abode.
How so?
It just highlights the importance of cultivating that constant connection to God, so that whenever and however they depart, their orientation is already towards the light, towards union with the supreme.
This all feels incredibly profound, but how does someone living in the midst of, modern life actually apply these ancient teachings? It can feel very distant.
That's where the practical applications come in, and they can be quite down to earth. It starts with simple awareness in decision-making.
Like what?
Like just pausing before you act and asking yourself, okay, does this choice serve my long-term well-being, my higher goal, or is it just, a fleeting desire?
That's Buddha yoga in action again. Training the intellect.
Exactly. Like pausing before you mindlessly scroll social media or make that impulse purchase online.
Or practicing detachment through reflection.
Yes. Regularly contemplating the temporary nature of things, your job, your possessions, even your physical body. Recognizing that worldly success won't last forever can, paradoxically, ease the anxiety about losing them.
And using that refined intellect for calm responses instead of just reacting emotionally.
Absolutely. You're in a heated conversation, maybe. Instead of lashing out, your trained intellect can pause, take a breath, and choose a more rational, less ego-driven response.
Strengthening inner awareness seems important too.
Hugely. Maybe through journaling or just quiet contemplation. It helps you identify thoughts and emotions rooted in the temporary self, the ego, and consciously connect with that deeper I am consciousness that texts talk about.
And what about desires? It seems like redirecting them is key, rather than trying to just fight them head on.
It is. Instead of focusing against wanting something material, maybe focus towards desiring inner peace or spiritual growth or that connection with the divine.
Recognizing the cycle.
Yeah, recognizing that chasing material desires is often an endless cycle. Cultivating contentment with what you actually have. And of course, performing your duties, your work, your responsibilities, but without being attached to the specific outcome.
Karma yoga again?
Exactly, like the farmer who plants the seed but trusts the process. You focus on doing the action well, not obsessing over the result.
This path, though, it sounds really challenging. especially that core idea of maintaining the highest consciousness, particularly when facing life's inevitable difficulties, physical pain, emotional distress, loss.
It is the central challenge, no doubt. The body itself can be a huge distraction, pulling your attention downwards, holding on to that highest possibility when things feel like they're falling apart. That's the real work.
It sounds radical.
It is. One source describes the radical nature of this path quite vividly. Moving towards the universal requires letting go of old safety nets, old notions of happiness. Compromises become less possible. It's like stepping off a cliff, in a way, trusting the universe or the divine to support you.
So the effort isn't about pushing hard against the world, but more a kind of surrender, letting go.
Precisely. The effort is in the letting go, in the surrender to the divine within. Constant contemplation and practice are what strengthen that connection to the I amness, that principle of existence and intelligence that is your true core. Experience and awareness, those are the goals.
And the path itself isn't always smooth or pleasant, even on a spiritual level. It's not all bliss.
Not necessarily. The sources mention that experiences of the Supreme can range from wonderfully blissful to intensely difficult. They can feel like ascending towards light or descending into darkness.
Wow.
But the teaching is that both types of experience can actually lead to the same truth. However, maintaining consciousness through the difficult descending phases requires that you've already established yourself in that ascending awareness through practice.
Is there a key to preparing yourself to even grasp these deeper revelations, to make them feel real?
Well, one source suggests that continuous engagement with the Bhagavad Gita itself is crucial.
Just reading it.
Reading it repeatedly, thoughtfully. It prepares your mind and heart to receive the essence of these teachings, allowing them to sink in, to resonate, and gradually become living, tangible experiences in your own consciousness.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Chapter 8 of the Bhagavad Gita gives us this stark, clear picture.
A picture where your current state of consciousness is a direct link to your ultimate destiny.
It really hammers home the incredible importance of not just what you do, but your state of being as you do it.
And critically, the state you cultivate constantly, day in and day out, because that final moment of transition, death, is so uncertain.
It's a powerful call, isn't it? To refine your intellect, redirect your energy away from fleeting desires towards lasting truth. Surrender the limitations of the ego.
And cultivate an unbroken connection with the divine, whether that's through devotion or knowledge or mindful action, or maybe all of them combined.
It paints a picture of a reality far more vast and eternal than the temporary material world we usually focus on.
And offers a challenging, yes, but also a radical path to break free from that endless cycle of temporary pleasures and suffering. This isn't just abstract philosophy, it's presented as a practical, albeit demanding guide for life's most crucial transition.
Which really leaves us with an important question, doesn't it? If the state of your consciousness at the moment of death is what determines where you go next, how are you actively cultivating that state right now?